And Russia is also logging record caseloads of COVID-19, more than 16,000 on Tuesday alone. Authorities there are doing all they can, however, to avoid another unpopular lockdown. They're also touting new Russian-made vaccines due to be rolled out soon. And as DW found out, for many people, that's music to their ears.
Music is his drug. Nikolai Makarov jokes, to him, it's essential. The professional musician directs an amateur choir in Moscow. The group is getting ready for an upcoming event, as if nothing has happened. No second wave of coronavirus during the pandemic that has swept across Russia and the whole world. No one here wants to stop singing, despite the risk of infection. The risk here is no greater than the risk of riding the subway or going to the supermarket every day. Of course, we adhere to safety measures, keep our distance while sitting, constantly pour disinfectant all over ourselves, and so on. But ultimately, belief and hope remain. Hope that all goes well, something the Russians now could use, as their country has ranked number 4 worldwide in new infection rates for weeks. About 15,000 COVID-19 cases are registered each day in Russia. But despite this dramatic situation, officials want to avoid another lockdown like the one this spring. We've just extended the school vacation to 2 weeks. All businesses are first being given the recommendation and later will be ordered to have their employees work mostly from home. Bars and restaurants must obey hygiene measures in order to stay open. The city performs frequent checks on individual restaurants and supermarkets and imposes penalties if customers or staff don't wear masks, for example. Starting this week, all guests must register with an electronic code when they visit bars. But many are not especially worried about the risk of infection. We're all going to infect each other anyway. Half the country has already survived mild cases of coronavirus, myself included. I had coronavirus without symptoms, and I'm not afraid now. I think that sooner or later, we'll all get it. Nikolai Makarov's chorus say they get tested for coronavirus regularly so that they can attend as many rehearsals as possible. If one singer tests positive for COVID-19, he says everyone would be notified immediately. We can't live without music. When we were in quarantine for nearly half a year this spring and couldn't sing together, we nearly sobbed in despair. Many of the choir singers want to get vaccinated against coronavirus as soon as possible. Russia has just approved its second vaccine against COVID-19, despite international scientists' grave safety concerns.
And let's cross over now to DW's Moscow correspondent, Yuri Resheto. Yuri, we just heard in your report, it mentioned those 2 vaccines that have been approved there in Russia. Do we know how effective they are, and what is the outlook for distribution?
Well, this week, Vladimir Putin announced the approval of the second new coronavirus vaccine, even though neither of the Russian vaccines have passed the 3rd phase of rigorous safety trials required in the US and Europe. Earlier in August, Putin reported the first vaccination. Even more, one of his daughters has been given the Russian vaccine, he said. This is surely called a PR effect. It's clear that the first to develop the vaccine is a winner in the eyes of the establishment and ordinary people. For Putin, this might be his personal breakthrough, Sarah, but the 3rd test phase of the vaccine will only end in spring. Only then we'll be able to see the effectiveness of the Russian vaccine despite all announcements.
Talk with us a little bit about the general situation, because the number of cases in Russia is increasing. How well prepared are the medical facilities there?
Well, from a medical perspective, Russia has, of course, learned a lot from the first wave. It's not a third world country. The basic service works here, and it's mostly for free even, meaning really basic medical service. Of course, the authorities have also learned a lot how to avoid bottlenecks in the hospitals. But we shouldn't forget about the huge gap between the capital, Moscow, and the province. Moscow is a thoroughly Western European city with pretty high medical standards, but Moscow Moscow is Russia's calling card and a Western bubble. The countryside is very different. Pandemic is much more dangerous there because many hospitals are poorly equipped. There are also shortages of well-trained staff since wages are extremely low and the best doctors are all here in Moscow.
Compared with other nations, I mean, we saw those pictures, for example, of that choir that was practicing there. They weren't wearing masks. They were singing. Are the Russians in general a bit more relaxed about the pandemic? And if so, why is that the case, Yuri?
Well, until a week ago, I would say people in Moscow were actually very relaxed. You could hardly see any face masks. It's partly due to a long and tough lockdown Russians experienced in March. Most Muscovites sat at home for almost 3 months. And of course, people felt relieved once the restrictions were lifted. A memory of the lockdown is still present, though nobody wants it to happen again. Secondly, Sarah, there is also the Russian mentality of the so-called avos. Avos means everything will be fine somehow. Thirdly, the government's information campaign plays also a role. It aims to avoid a hard lockdown, as I showed it in my report. But, as I said, it was like this a week ago. Now the tide is turning in Russia too, and we see, for example, police officers checking people at subway entrances for wearing face masks. So let's see if another lockdown may be imposed here in Russia too.
Yuri Reshetto in Moscow. Thank you.